Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yojana Sharma, and I'm your host for this panel discussion. A very warm welcome to all this gracious audience here. The theme for today's panel discussion is Making the New Normal Better for Women Techies. This year has been unusual to say the least. COVID 19 is here to stay for the longer time. And while this lockdown and its perpetualities are here to stay, we must find ways how not to just survive, but to thrive and to ace it. For that, we have curated a power packed panel comprising of an entrepreneur, three senior tech leaders, and most importantly, women who have aced different circumstances in their careers and risen the corporate ladder. Please join me as I welcome my panelists, Grishma Unikrishnan, co-founder, MedPrime Technologies, NASCOM Center of Excellence, Deepthi Rao, Senior Engineer and Vice President at Goldman Sachs India, Subhashini Sriram, Engineering Director, American Express, and Rekha Vijayalakshmi, Senior Vice President, Global Client Delivery Emphasis. Without further ado, I would like my panelists to quickly self introduce themselves and also share their opening remarks. May I begin with you, Deepthi?
Sure. Thank you, Yojana. Hi, everyone. It's my great privilege and pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Deepthi Rao. I work in Goldman Sachs India office. Uh, Currently, I lead the MBD Engineering Business Unit in Goldman Sachs. This is my 12th year with the firm. I've seen many ups and downs in my career. I'm hoping that I should be able to help the audience today with whatever questions they have and maybe provide some guidance on how they can navigate through these challenging times. I don't think anything about the current situation can be called normal, but we can call it new normal. It's one thing is for sure, change is a constant. Businesses are changing, revenue models are changing, technologies are changing, and this is going to happen all the time. So adaptability is a key strength that we need to learn as we grow more senior in our career. We need to keep adapting to the circumstances to stay relevant. COVID-19 has shown us that a new type of leadership is required. Primarily, we need to show resilience, flexibility, empathy, collaboration, and caring for others. And these are all characteristics of traditionally feminine management styles. So I would say women bring in these qualities that are needed in the tech industry. The pandemic has brought in digital transformation and requires a lot of change in the way we do business. Having more representation of women in tech will definitely lead to innovations that reflects the needs of the population, half of the population who have not been adequately represented so far.
I think that's quite an opening for us, Deepthi, here. Uh, Grishma, we're waiting for your introduction and your opening remarks on the topic.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am one of the four co-founders of a medical device startup known as MedPrime Technologies. Important thing to point out is that there are four co-founders, of which I'm the only female one. All my remaining co-founders are male. So I think I'm very relevant to this conversation. I think I don't see, I would not specifically mention that the challenges for women in startup are much more different than that for someone in, say, an MNC, because ultimately the challenge is multitasking, right? Because no matter how career oriented or how supportive the environment around you is, ultimately if you when you are working from home, there are multiple things that you have to take care of. For in many instances you have children who are at home and having online classes. You will obviously have to take care of if there are elders in the family. It may not be only you, but obviously you are a part of managing the household as well. Even if you have support from husbands, from parents, it is still a challenging task. Finding a place to have just sit and isolate yourself and concentrate also becomes a challenge in many households, where if you have like more than if you have four members, two children having online classes, a husband and wife working, having four separate rooms with good internet connectivity, power connection, even that becomes a challenge in many situations. So I think these issues are the same across, whether it's a startup, whether it's someone working in the corporate. The challenges are more or less similar. The only difference being that in the startup, I mean, it might feel a bit more. I mean, you might be a bit more pinched for resources.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the main thing. But otherwise, I feel the overall challenges will remain the same.
I would really like to, Subhashini Subramaniam, please introduce yourself, and also we are keenly awaiting your inputs on the opening topic.
Yeah. So hello everyone, I am Subhashini Subramaniam, Engineering Director at American Express. I lead a team at Bangalore which is building the next-gen digital acquisition platform for a seamless and awesome digital experience to our current and prospective cardholders. So the new normal, as we call it these days, has brought into our lives a mixed bag of opportunities and challenges, especially for women. So while many of us had to cope with radical changes in our day-to-day lives, anticipatory grief when one of our closed ones is impacted by the pandemic, and job security issues as well cropping up in our minds once in a while, for some it has been actually a boon, as they could avoid the long daily commute, are getting an opportunity to spend more time with their families. So as women, we have gone through the various stages of denial, anger, sadness in the earlier phases of the new normal. And I think at this point in time, we have moved on to an acceptance phase, right? Acceptance of the new normal. And I think it is time that we take charge of the change and adapt ourselves to thrive professionally and succeed in our careers.
That's quite a point you mentioned here, that women have they're used to making adjustments to different phases of life. I would like to have the opening remarks from Rekha Vijayalakshmi as well. Thank you, Rekha, for those remarks.
Rekha Vijayalakshmi. I consider myself to be a technology business leader, trying to make a positive impact in everything I do every day. My roles have changed a lot over the years, and in every step of the way, this has been my goal. The first 11 years of my career, I was working in Indian Space Research Organization as a design engineer. That would be the best way to make everyone understand it. After that, I joined IT industry. My IT career was mostly here in the US. Starting with working as a project manager, business analyst role, I moved on to owning accounts from a delivery standpoint, technology delivery standpoint. First one, then two, then whole business units. And today in Mphasis, I have a portfolio of accounts, mostly in financial services, where we deliver technology services for our customers in the banking and investment management space. Making the new normal better, it depends upon how we define this new normal. While the world has been changing continuously over the last several years because of technology, COVID has sort of compressed the change timeline. The new normal, the way I define it, would be a world that is disrupted by this new work from home paradigm and how we apply technology in that paradigm. To make this better for women techies, there are two things that we have to do, in my opinion. One is to spend conscious effort in understanding how the world of the woman techie has been impacted by this paradigm shift. And two, how can they contribute the most in this new paradigm? Ultimately, man or woman, everyone will be valued only by the impact or the contribution they make. So knowing these two things, we will have to design a system which enables the woman techie to contribute to the fullest and to feel that she has reached her potential or is on the way to reaching her potential.
How should a woman technologist sort of define the new normal in her career? Deepti, I'd like to take it to you first, and then I'd like to speak to Subhashini later on this.
Sure. I think one thing we need to remember is, as Subhashini also pointed this out, with challenges come opportunities as well. So we should try and find a silver lining in these challenges. For example, I think unlike many other industries, our jobs in the tech industry can be done quite effectively from home. And in fact, many tech companies already had well-established work from home policies as a norm, even before the pandemic. This outbreak is creating greater demand for tech roles, and it could lead to new opportunities in an otherwise challenging environment and job market. For instance, I have made the most of Zoom meetings. Earlier, because I am in a regional location, I used to be the only one dialing in remotely to meetings. But now everyone is remote. So in a way, this has been an equalizer. A few things I would advise other women, at least when they're preparing themselves for opportunities in tech, is don't be intimidated. Focus on what you do know and what you bring to the table. A little confidence goes a long way. Talk to people, look for opportunities to connect, network with others, learn from others. Find a good mentor who will be your guide and give you honest feedback and advice. And advocate for yourself. You have to ask for what you want. No one is going to do that for you.
Okay, that's I think quite a pointer, not just for women technologists, but for everybody on board here. So, Vashari, since you raised this point and sort of you opened this realm of discussion for us, please give us more insights into it.
Yeah, sure. So the new normal has, to a large extent, redefined the way we need to work. So while we are accepting and adapting, the smartest thing to do, I'm just reinstating my point, the point that I made earlier, is to grab the opportunities, right? It brings along by understanding what would be the new set of skill sets that would be required to build a great career. So one of the most important thing and very good thing that has happened is that location is no more a consideration, right? Before earlier, when we are looking for a job, or even when we are doing a current role, if you want to move to a new location, organizations need to think right twice. Okay, how would the virtual or remote working would actually kind of be suitable for this particular role? But now those barriers have been broken. So the work from home success has actually opened doors for hiring talent across locations. So thereby it is opening up new opportunities for people anywhere in India. As a matter of fact, even I would say it's not only India, but across the globe. So even the onboarding and team member interactions are also becoming, virtual. So the required skills to, if you're, going for into a new job, ramping up, building, relationships, having effective, interactions with the team, all virtually is very important. So those aspects, I think, we need to kind of hone our skills on. On the leadership side, if you look at the leadership trends, I think Deepti also mentioned few of the aspects, right? So given that the future workplace is also mostly going to be a blend of working remotely as well as, at office premises, the leadership style is no more this micromanagement, style, but it is moving more towards enhanced communication, more transparency, collaboration, being more inclusive. So building those leadership styles is also one of the things that the new normal is, coaching us to transition into. And from the last point is on the tech trends, right? So across the globe, because of everything moving on remote, there is a lot of focus on moving digital, right? Moving online. So digital transformation is definitely where the current and the future trends are leaning towards. So technologies like cloud migrations and cloud based services especially in domains like fintech or online retail, entertainment, would be some of the domains where we see a huge boom in growth, and followed by the digital-led experiences, because more and more people are transacting online. So the digital-led experience will also continue to grow in popularity, and innovations in this space will also be a norm. And also, as more and more services are delivered online and work from home will be the norm, there is a big need for improving the security, right? So the security domain is also one of the big domain where people should or can consider building their future career.
I think that's quite a point made, and that also sorts of blends into the next subtopic that we had created for ourselves. How to sort of thrive in a turmoil, not just being COVID-19, but very abrupt situations in your career or in life, and how to sort of get over it and ace your career.
For a startup, anything can be anything can easily rock the boat. For instance, tomorrow if I get a huge order, I get a huge business out of the blue. Even that, it's a good problem to have, but it is still something that, can create some sort of chaos within the company. And similarly, of course, if business slows down suddenly, even that, but that's a bad problem, right? You have a good problem and a bad problem. So anything can easily rock the boat when you're in a startup. So having to learn to adapt to that is something that you eventually pick up naturally when you are in a startup. I can give you one example. We started this company while we were doing our masters, at IIT Bombay. So by the end of the final semester, all of our colleagues, classmates had gotten their placements, and they were rejoicing, and they were sort of enjoying, because after that they would be going into a job and they have a steady source of income. While we were at the point where even the income that we have, which is a stipend, is going to get over, and how are we going to survive after graduation? So each point, it's very easy to rock a boat when you're in a startup. So you gradually, you learn to thrive like that. There is no other way to go forward. So adaptability is something that you have to pick up as you are working in a startup. The other thing is multitasking, which again, like you said, being a close-knit team, being a small team that handles A to Z of a company's functioning. Most people, especially in the management level, have to pick up multiple tasks. For instance, I used to handle the business development, I handle the fundraising, and I also used to handle the quality testing of the products. So similarly, our CEO is involved in the product development, but also is also customer facing and does demonstrations at certain times. So we all pick up these multiple tasks and skills, which again helps with thriving professionally, because when the need comes, we are able to step up. Do we have to become the cleaner tomorrow? Do we have to become a salesperson? Do we have to handle the taxes? We never know. So we kind of get accustomed to that, and pick up all these different skills, which actually really helps when when things are not going smoothly.
What has changed are the strategic, and what has changed is the personal. In the past, when you have to meet with the customers just to understand who they are, just to understand their long-term outcomes, it was very easy to walk into the rooms, to have a conversation, and to not to go without a set agenda, so to speak. Same is the case with team members. When a new team member joins the team, there is a lot of induction into the tribal world of your team that happens. That is lost. It's also difficult. Tasks are easily assigned and delegated. Ownership, to make people feel ownership for a new idea, for a new and exciting plan. We need time together, and that is what has been affected. So we're all trying to find good and better solutions for this every single day. We have to find ways to sustain these relationships every day. In our company, for instance, we've had multiple leadership connects over the last 6 months to make sure that all of us stay aligned to our strategy for the year. And we try to percolate it downwards to the teams as well, just to spend time together. We try to define employee engagement in a very different way so that the experience of being together can be reached remotely. We even had something called a remote walkathon spread over 2 months, where globally all of us walked together remotely. Now there are so many apps that enable you to do that, right? So you try to define new ways of doing things, right? So these changes in the way we create long-term, meaningful, non-transactional interactions. This is what the new normal means to me.
Thank you, Rekha, for those wonderful insights. With those, we have aptly covered the most prime and the core topic that we wanted to discuss here today, that being defining the new normal for your career itself, not just COVID-19, and how to ace the roadblocks. With that, I'd like to come back to the core discussion of Techie Geek Goddess. Geek Goddess was envisaged as a flag bearer of the diversity agenda in the tech workplaces. And even after years of work, we still feel that organizations are still sort of struggling. They are formulating policies, they're formulating programs to ensure that the gender diversity at their workplaces, especially in the tech workforce, is maintained. With that, I'd like to get back to Subhashini Subramaniam and start my next subtopic with her. Subhashini, please tell us, what's the best way to readdress the gender imbalance at your workplace? I would really like if you would bring down some examples from your workplace, or some things that you thought have been very useful in helping close the gender gap.
Yeah, definitely. So gender imbalance is an important issue that is existing across organizations, across countries, which needs continued focus. Issues related to equality in pay, equal representation at a senior leadership and a CXO levels are a few of the challenges that we hear about very regularly. So I would like to quote a few initiatives at American Express that were proactively taken to address the gender imbalance. The first one being the equal pay. So an exhaustive analysis of the pay scale amongst genders were done, and a pay correction was done across board to ensure that the pay equality was there, irrespective of the gender that the person belonged to. Hiring and mentoring. So there was a lot of stress within Amex to hire the diverse talent at all levels, including middle and senior leadership levels, followed by a structured mentoring program to identify and groom the diverse talent towards taking up their next leadership roles within the organization. And I'm very proud to say that today the India and Japa technology is being headed by Ruchika, a woman leader who joined Amex about 20 years back, and it's a great example of how Amex has enabled the growth of talented women from within. The next aspect is culture. So Amex culture is actually based on creating a very strong sense of belonging, inclusiveness, and diversity. So to an extent that inclusivity and culture is one of our important pillars of our value system. And another aspect that we focus on is identifying the blind spots. So that's a very important aspect towards bringing in that gender balance. And it's very important that we check our blind spots related to the gender bias, which could be both conscious and unconscious. So bias is often in the form of incorrect narratives, and it continues to hamper the progress, right? So despite enough evidence, many people still believe in the myths like women lack ambition or confidence. They opt out of big roles because for them family is more important. There aren't enough women in the pipeline to increase the representation across the board, and so on and so forth. So this mindset shift needs to occur, and at Amex, we take the approach of achieving gender balance as a business opportunity right? Rather than treating it as a women only problem or a gender problem, we take it as a business opportunity where it is solved as a business problem, and this has really made a big difference at Amex.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I'd like to take a point from Rekha here. I think I'd also like to understand the program and policies at their workplace, which they feel are the best and have helped them ramp up the score of women in their workforce.
Relive your aspirations, where we are looking to bring women who took a break back to their back to the workforce, right? Programs like that, as well as simple things like how do you write an ad which is gender neutral so that more women apply for the position. Women will respond only if they're sure that they meet 90% of the criteria. They will not. If you write all the requirements and nice to haves and all that, women will not even apply. So you lose out. So you need to learn to write gender neutral advertisements, for instance. And after the hiring, the onboarding and the training needs to be structured so that we can identify people who really want to grow and bring them forward. Leadership programs and providing opportunities, most of them exist actually. Where you need is only certain specific interventions. Women need support in certain junctures to make the right decisions. So assigning, we do have mentorship programs in most companies, but we need to go beyond that with a specific purpose of, hey, this person at this juncture will need support. How do we support them? This person is taking a temporary break for a personal reason. How do you provide the resources so that they can keep in touch during this period? The fact that we are going remote actually helps us in these matters. How do you change the measurement mechanisms? How do you change the performance rating mechanisms so that we measure outcomes? These are the things that I think are necessary. I also think it's necessary to go into the community to talk to young women while they are in school, to encourage them to code, to tell them that tech careers can be meaningful. Tech careers can be used to create an impact to society. I think it makes a lot of difference. Making the connection between code and the life of ordinary people, I think will make a huge difference in bringing more women into tech.
The four of the all total founders, would you like to talk about, how do you address this gender imbalance at the workplace?
So in our case, the gender imbalance is not so much. I mean, we are still a very small team. So we have 14 full-time members now, out of which 3 are now women employees, including myself. So this imbalance is not so much because of any misunderstanding or any myth or any sort of discrimination against women. So what has happened in our case is that obviously when we are starting out, the first priority is to fill in the core functionalities. So which in our case, apart from the research part, which the founders were anyway doing, we had one which was manufacturing, which again it's a very obvious, because it deals with heavy machinery and things like that. So it's a male dominated space. And even if we want to sort of balance that out, there are no applicants for maybe a CNC machine operator, right? So that was one core area. The other core area was the sales part. Now, like for us, again, sales involves a lot of travel. It involves traveling with equipment that might come up to like 15 kgs, right? So again, it's something that requires a lot of physical strength, and so again, not a lot of women takers. So for us, these were the 2 core functionalities that were the first positions that we had to fill. It was naturally male oriented and male dominated. But now, as we are expanding, like we have sort of diversified, now we are hiring for administrative roles, for more social media, digital marketing, design roles. So now we are able to incorporate more women, and we are trying to keep sort of balance it out by hiring women for these areas.
Grishma, I think your point is made. And while we are speaking, we are getting a plethora of questions for all of you ladies out here. I'd like to get back to the questions a little later because I still have to speak to Deepthi about it. Deepthi comes from an engineering background herself, and now she's a leader in her domain. Deepthi, what was it like when you started out when your early days in the career in the domain, and now that you're X years into your career? How has the industry changed? How have the norms changed? How has the mindset changed?
Sure. I'd like to also answer the previous question, because I would like to tell something about the different initiatives that we are taking at Goldman Sachs as well to
Yes.
address the gender imbalance in the workplace. So I'll start with that and then move on to the next question. So I believe that we need to take a person-by-person approach to talent management. There is no one-size-fits-all here. We need to foster an environment that values diverse perspectives. And at Goldman Sachs, we take this very, very seriously. We have established goals to improve gender diversity at the firm, so that women will represent 50% of global talent over time.
Sorry.
50%.
We will have to repeat that line again, please.
Okay.
But there is some
your segment
disturbance. Yeah, I'll just
Ravina,
start
can you
over,
start again?
okay?
Yeah. Start again.
All right. So we have established aspirational goals to improve gender diversity at Goldman Sachs. We anticipate that we want to establish 50% global talent over time, 50% of analyst and associate hires over time, 50% global campus analyst class by 2021, that's next year, and 40% of vice president level by 2025. We know these are aspirational goals, but we believe that we have a strong talent pipeline, and we believe they are achievable goals. So some of the programs that we run at Goldman Sachs globally as well as in Bangalore, we have launched a program called Women's Career Strategies Initiative. And this is a 6-month tailor-made program globally for high-performing women at the associate level. And research within the firm has proved that women who have gone through this program have actually outperformed their peers and continue to remain in the firm far longer than those who have not. So it's been something that's been very successful and working for many years now. At the senior women and VP levels, we also have targeted sponsorship and mentorship programs which are designed to accelerate career advancement through senior sponsorship and advocacy. We have very specific programs targeted towards key junctions in women's professional and personal lives, such as maternity, returning to the work post a break. So for example, we invest in the talent pipeline. We have a very comprehensive maternity management program. It includes a wide array of services to support women through pregnancy and motherhood, including mentoring, wellness care, coaching and awareness for the managers on how to be understanding and supportive, flexible work arrangements, and also home pickup and drop in office camps, among many other things. We have a state-of-the-art childcare center in our Bangalore office. We also have, and I believe this is one of the first programs of its kind, we have a returnship program which offers internship and then future employment opportunities to women who've taken career breaks. So it is actually quite hard to get back into the technical field because, as you mentioned, everything keeps changing, and it's easy to lose touch and fall behind your peers if you have taken a break from your career. Sometimes even getting back, even the interviewers are hesitant to make offers to people who have taken career break because they wonder if they will be able to cope up with the new normal and with the competitive and demanding workplace. so we have this internship program which gives an opportunity for women who've taken a 2-year career break to come back, and it's a launch pad for them to restart their careers.
Thank you, Deepti. That's insightful. I'd like to go back to my earlier question to you, which was about difference on how the IT industry has changed from the time that you joined in to the time that you have grown X years into your career. How has the industry, the mindset, the policies changed? Just quick 2 minutes to recapitulate all of that.
Well, hard to recapitulate in two minutes. Well, one thing is, change is happening all the time, right? It's not just since I joined or since you joined. It's been like even 6 months ago, things were so different. 1 year ago, it was completely a different world altogether. So I can't say that it's, over the course of the years, what the changes I have seen are, like we used to be a bit of a jack of all trades earlier. So there was no specialization and saying I'm an expert in this one thing and that's the thing I'm going to be doing. I think Grishma touched upon it, but basically we used to be open for any job, anything. So whatever the team and the firm requires, we would jump onto that. Today this technology, tomorrow something else, and open to anything, learning everything. And in hindsight, I think that was not a bad thing. That was actually good, because it gives you an open mind where you can now explore different things. Nothing seems too challenging because you feel like, okay, I can learn this and I can do this, even if it's something I haven't done before. So it's a new thing. Nowadays, I feel people are a lot more focused in their interests. They know what they like, and they want to focus only on those things and specialize in those areas. So we have a more rigid kind of structure in terms of project management as well. So who has to do what? It's very well laid out. Those are some of the changes. Technology, of course, I can't even tell you like how many changes have happened. It's completely drastically different than what it was, right? So I think more important is like we shouldn't be tied down to one thing and say it was always like this, so I'm going to continue doing it that way. Being adaptable, flexible is the norm.
Great. Thank you. With that, I would like to take questions, because there's a heap of questions waiting for all of us. But I'd only like to pick up questions that are relevant to this forum, so that we have incisive insights for everybody who's watching us today. I'll quickly try to pick questions, something that are related to our panelists. My first question is from a startup person. Her name is Shefali Sharma. She says she's working as a developer in a startup. Grishma, I think you're the best person to take this question. She's asking, hi, I'm working as a startup engineer in a retail startup and working from home right now. We're a small team chasing big targets. In this lockdown, my work hours have increased and I'm asked to multitask. How should I learn to ace such situations and at times say no also?
Yeah, so this is something that I felt I should come back and touch upon, because when you talked about the challenges that women are facing in the lockdown, so this is something that I realized I missed out and should talk about, is the working hours. But again, this is not related to startups. I'm seeing it everywhere that no one is sticking to the 8 hours, 9 hours working hours anymore. It's right from the morning till end, just because commute times are not relevant anymore. Companies expect the workers to be available during those times also, and to actually add that onto their working hours. So I think it has to come. I mean, companies should take this into consideration, that just because they're not commuting doesn't mean they don't have other tasks or responsibilities, and that should contribute to their working hours at no additional no additional pay. I mean, it's expected of them. So I think it's something change that has to come from the company's perspective, because it's not something that's limited to startups. I'm seeing it happening even in larger companies. So that's definitely, I mean,
absolutely.
yes.
Grishma, Absolutely, Grishma, point taken. I'd really, it will make a lot of sense if you bring down, share some tips with her on how to sort of multitask, number one, and how to at times say no and, put up a stand.
So, what I would suggest is to not go strictly, I mean, not by working hours, but to actually define a plan, a work plan for the day at the beginning of the day, to sort of list out the targets that are to be achieved. And then, I mean, obviously, depending upon the number of working hours, right? So, if it's a 8-hour working day, list out the number of things that you're planning to finish, communicate that with your immediate manager, and then once your working hours are complete and you've completed the targets, and then you sort of log off for the day. So it has to be a balance. It shouldn't if there is something urgent that has to be done, obviously that has to be done in priority and completed in the course of the day, and lesser important things that are not extremely urgent or does not have a deadline for that day can be pushed to the next day if it is not being completed within those work hours. So you need to keep a balance of both your work hours as well as your tasks to be completed, things to do for the day, basically. So managing it that way would make it more sensible.
Thank you, Grishma. I think Shefali would have got an answer there. Next, I have a very interesting question coming up. I think I'd really like, Subhashini to take it. It's a person called Subirami D. She says, I'm working in a bank and I've been working for 5 years, and I'm doing decently well in my career. Now there's a talk of upskilling. My colleagues are, taking up courses, certificate courses, or even some a master's course to sort of upskill and ramp themselves. How should I sort of ascertain if a certain course is relevant for me? Subhashini, would you guide her in this career situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So not only in general, upskilling is very important, but given the new norm, upskilling is absolutely, critical. Given that, if you don't constantly keep learning, we will get outdated in no time, right? So it gone are those days where we are very happy with, what we have learned, and we are constantly doing the same thing again and getting better at it. But, those days are gone, and the current trend and maybe even the future trend is looking at how we can ramp up very fast on the new technologies. So my advice to her would be pick up skills. There are two ways of looking at it, right? So if you want to continue in your current role, look at the different aspects in your current project or your product, which where you see a skill gap, right? What are your current skills and what more skills you need to build if you have to kind of become a expert in the area of your domain, which could be a product or it could be a project if it's a large project. That is, so identify those skill gaps and then identify those courses or trainings or even assignments, hands-on assignments that needs to be that is relevant to that particular skill set, and then take up those. The second way of doing it, if you're looking at taking up a new role, right, either within the company or maybe outside, so you will have maybe a particular team you want to move into, or it could be a particular company, your dream company that you would like to join. So then you have to identify what is the tech stack there, or what is the domain out there, what kind of skill set is required, and then upskill yourself based on those requirements. So it completely depends what is at what career level you are and what is your next step. So based on that, you can make the right choice.
Thank you, Subhashini. I think those are it's a very crisp situation that you have given her. I was quickly checking the different questions that are coming by. I picked up a question from a person called Pratima Rani. She's working in a tech firm. I'll pack it to Rekha, Pratima Rani says, I'm a network engineer and the only woman in a team of 6 men. I want to take up more projects even outside my team. I have already made this request to my manager, and but how do I raise it like a very prominent and very pertinent request, and not like a passing remark? So I would request Rekha's attention and advice on this.
Thank you, Pradima, for this question. It's a very interesting question for me personally. And I can relate very well to you. My first job, for 1 year, I worked in Steel Authority of India. There were only 2 women engineers in a steel plant with 7,000 people. So I do understand what you're saying. Oftentimes in meetings, every single day, I am the single woman. So I do understand. So my question, I'll help you about how you will talk to your manager, but I also want to encourage you to look deeper into yourself. Why is this making you uncomfortable? I want you to think. The reason why I say this is that today you can talk to your manager and maybe you will get another role. That's okay. But as you grow in the organization, as you take up new roles, as you go to, different organizations, different countries, this situation may happen again. So I think if this is the only reason that's holding you back, and your male colleagues are friendly with you, you're able to work, you're able to contribute effectively, then I need you to look into yourself to see how do you overcome your, reluctance to work in a male group. I think you should consider that. The second part is, okay, whatever is the reason, I'm not getting into your personal situation since I don't know that. But if you really have to get out, what I would say is that, when you go to your manager, the first thing that you could say is that, I would like a chance to work outside in a project. I've been doing this work in this group. Give me a chance to do something else on the side. Let me explore whether I like that better or not. I do not think they will mind a lot, because almost all good leaders like to mentor and bring their team members forward. The manager you are working with may be taking more time because he may have an immediate deliverable. He has made customer commitments or organizational commitments which prevent him from taking an action immediately. So once you give that assurance that I do want to try out, I will take care of the immediate deliverable. And you can ask, if you don't know what is the deliverable that's holding him back, you can ask that question also. When do you think I will be able to finish all my commitments and move on? So they tell you that, and in the interim, you can ask for additional assignments which give you exposure outside. The advantage is twofold. One is, it allows you to keep your foothold while trying out other things. And you may not like it also, for all you know, right? So if you like it, you can move out. If you don't like it, you have a home to come back to in your area of competency. The second way in which I would say is that if you have a specific area, always the specificity and the intensity of your ask helps others to help you. So if you just say generically that you want to go somewhere, then they will be able to help you only less. But if there is a job posting somewhere, or if there is a specific place to which you want to go and you have all the qualifications in that area and you can say that, then your manager is more likely to support you.
Thank you, Rekha, for sharing those lifesaver tips. I have last question. I have a heap of questions actually, but I can only pick up one question right now. And that is from a person called Neeru Rawat. Deepti, this is for you. She's doing a BTech right now. She says, I want to pursue my course and then take up a job little later. While my classmates are frantically talking about internships and jobs and they're applying for it, at times I feel left out. And at times I feel that my decision of taking up a job little later is okay, it suits me. So what is your advice? Is taking job after a break really bad? Is it looked down upon by hiring managers?
I would like to understand a little bit more, Neeru, like what do you intend to do in that break period. So is it a different career choice that you're making, doing something else for a couple of years and then coming back to a tech career? I think I'd like to understand what the break plan is, because it will depend a little bit on that. So in general, as I have mentioned before, there are a few red flags or questions that might be raised when you've taken a career break. Nothing to be worried about or afraid of. It's just something that you need to be prepared for. So you need to have an explanation of why you haven't been working for 2 years or whatever the time of the break is, and B, you need to keep up with the technical skills and the advances that have happened in the interim. So you can't just let yourself stagnate and not keep up with the changing trends. So when you apply for a job, people are going to be expecting you to be at the level of any other applicant. They're not going to give you any concessions because you have not been in the industry for a few years. So you need to make sure that your skills are sharpened and are on par with any other candidate.
So I think there are two clear takeaways for her. That number one, taking a break is not bad, provided you've sort of studied or researched, or you have some valid reason for taking a break. And number two, you should be upskilling or polishing your knowledge, or you should be ensuring that you stand at par with your colleagues or with the other students of your class to ensure that you have an equal chance of getting selected amongst them. That's how I see this answer. And
If I may add something to that. So just to add on to what you were saying, so taking a break shouldn't be a problem, but you should be you should be able to convince your recruiter that how these 2 years or how the break that you've taken has made you better for that job. So you should be able to sort of bring that out, even if it's not related to the field. If you can show or showcase how you have grown as a person, or how it has made you more competent for that job, I don't think that should be much of an issue.
Thank you so much, Grishma, for putting it in these many words. And we have quickly, I was looking at the timer, 10 minutes left, and the most important question is coming up now for all of you ladies, which is how to be a catalyst of change for a gender-neutral world. I would like Subhashini Sriram to take a lead on this, followed by maybe Grishma and then Deepti.
Yeah, thanks. So basically, research and experience says that women who believed that focusing on gender neutrality actually felt greater power and confidence than women who actually advocated celebrating the differences, right? So, and that is where gender neutrality is all coming from. So both gender neutrality and the other parallel aspect, which is the gender awareness, are both strategies for achieving equality, right? While awareness basically promotes acknowledging and embracing the differences, the gender differences, neutrality actually kind of plays it down, tones it down, right? So rather than seeing them as very important, it sees them as less important when compared to other factors, because gender neutrality stresses more on individuality, right? So what makes someone unique as a person rather than as a man or a woman, right? So it's more about bringing your authentic self to work, right? So some of the things that we can do, and where even I've personally kind of use that in my day-to-day work life, is basically one of the things is stop or avoid reinforcing stereotypes. For instance, when we are assigning work to our team members, right? It's very natural, maybe it's an unconscious bias sometimes, that okay, we see women, okay, then we tend to assign some kind of task to them. They're good at doing that versus some other task. So it's better to look at someone as a person and what that which task would be the best suitable based on their skill set rather than looking at them from a gender viewpoint. And the second thing which has worked out well is the gender neutral hiring practices. For instance, when you actually when you're scanning the resumes, right? If you remove the personal identification of a person, including the gender, and just give them the the resume with all their accomplishment and work experience, I think there is a very high chance that the people will shortlist more diverse candidates rather if you actually have the resumes with name, because that bias again comes into picture, right? Okay. And of course there are the most important thing other than this is having gender neutral policies. For example, things like new addition to your family, right? Like childbirth leave benefits. Many times we are looking at we tend to coin the terms like maternity and paternity and things like that. A more gender neutral a policy would address it as a parental leave benefits, and to extend the same benefits to both the mothers and fathers, irrespective of who is availing those benefits. And another good example would be the back to work policy, right? Why is back to work only relevant to women, right? Even men do need men and all genders need to take time off to take care of their family or any other similar situation. So that also is one of the areas where we can have a gender neutral policy. And one more thing, I am trying to incorporate on a day-to-day basis is gender neutral language. Okay. I personally do this mistake a lot of times. For instance, when I'm meeting with my team, I usually say, "Hi guys," okay, irrespective of whether there are, men and women in the team, right? It may come across as it's okay, we really don't mean it. But I think those are some of the things which we can change, small things that we can change, which will, make a big difference. So rather than addressing as "Hi guys," rather I can say, "Hello everyone, hello team," right? So small changes, but definitely they make a big difference and can go a long way.
Great. Quickly, Grishma, please make your point.
Just quickly adding to one of the points that she mentioned regarding the maternity paternity leave. So I've seen a few examples where companies refer to them as primary caregiver and secondary caregiver, which I think is excellent, considering, I mean, it may be possible that a father wants to spend more time with the child, and the mother, gets back to work quickly. So, having that opportunity to define yourself as a primary caregiver, secondary caregiver, I think that's a really excellent example that I've come across very recently. Apart from that, how to be a catalyst, I think one of the biggest ways to be a catalyst is to just be a good example and to actually inspire other such examples as well, right? So if we are fortunate enough to have reached this position, to be in this place, we have overcome our obstacles. I mean, we still are, but we have achieved some recognition. So if we can use that to inspire more people to come into the field, talk about some of the good experiences that you have had being a woman in tech, how maybe and also how she mentioned individuality, right? How have your characteristics and your particular situation worked to your advantage? If you can talk to more people about that. For instance, I am, like I said, we are in the field of microscopes. So there was this instance where we have been to a conference where it was a medical equipment conference. So there were like salespeople from different companies, and there was us. And again, not a lot of women participating in these kinds of events. So later on, like I happened to catch up with someone I had met there over like after 2-3 months or something, and that person referred to me as, I remember you were the woman who was selling microscopes. So me being a woman in that space actually made our company, our brand more memorable, right? So although I can't say it's an entirely positive thing, but at that particular instance, it worked to our advantage. And if we can make use of such opportunities and sort of inspire more people and see the positivity that's coming out of it, I think that's a really good example to set. The other thing what we can do is, being in leadership positions, we have the years of people, we have the years of the other colleagues in management positions who will and have to listen to us. So talking like how mentioned about sort of speaking up against stereotypes, speaking up for the needs of women, because in many cases what usually happens is men are not even, like, awareness is sometimes missing of what are the conditions that women are going through and how these are affecting them. So actually speaking up about them, having the voice to speak up about them, can actually create a change within your company and within your community. So speaking up is something that we can definitely do to implement this change.
Sure. Quickly, Deepti, please, we're waiting for your input.
Sure. I think equality is a very distant goal for us, but we need to strive to achieve that before we reach a place of neutrality, right? How can we reach a place of equality first? One is, like, we need to get more women into the tech industry in the first place. I think we are still not there, even at the entry level. So how can we, when we are hiring, right, how can we ensure that we are getting enough representation from diverse candidates? So one thing I try to ensure, and I think that should be enforced across the organization, if you ask me, is do we have an equal number of candidates from both genders that we are interviewing? Or are we just picking out of 10 resumes, we have 9 men and 1 woman, and we are simply choosing the best candidate from among those, right? If we have at least an equal number of candidates that we are interviewing from both genders, then we can try to ensure a more equitable process for everybody in the hiring process. And this is something that, especially at the entry level and at the junior levels, ensuring that we have adequate representation in the hiring process, even among the interviewers. It can encourage more women to accept positions and feel comfortable in the working in that organization. And another thing which I feel is many women feel, and this is research has also shown it, the lack of mentors, right? The lack of mentors and the lack of female role models. So if everyone looks different than you might think that I can never make it because no one like me has ever made it here before, right? That role model and symbolism is not to be underestimated. So what I try to do in my team is ensure that every woman has a voice and also has a mentor whom they can go to for advice or guidance. And it can be anything, because there are many challenges that women face which maybe even men don't understand or are not aware of at all, that these kind of things can happen. So it's someone to informally share with and get guidance from can also go a long way. If you're ever feeling down or thinking of leaving, and at least there is someone whom you can discuss with and whom maybe you can share your problems with.
Confide in.
Yeah, confide in.
Yes, thank you, Deepti, for that point. And I'll take the last point from Rekha here before we wrap this very interesting discussion. Over to you, Rekha.
I don't see it as the biggest. So what has helped me in this? What I'm trying to do is to carry through things which helped me all these years, because I don't see any reason to discard them, and then build new muscle for the new world. I'm trying both. So things that help me. One is to learn every day and learn with humility, because you see, if you look at my career, I've changed roles, changed things that I do, because of which in many situations I have started not like an expert or a person who knows everything all the time. Because of that, I place a lot of value on learning, and I spend a lot of time learning. That seems very, very important for me to continue. The second thing that helps me all the time is to understand what's the bigger goal, what's the purpose that we are all working towards as a company, as a group of individuals. And I take a lot of time to read, to talk to people and understand that. These two things I think will help me in turmoil also. The third is to break through the silos. I really don't see the silos, and sometimes to my own detriment, I don't see the silos. But if we break through those different silos of organization, of distance, or even the boundaries between customers and service providers, I think.
Very interesting, very enriching discussion. I must thank all my esteemed panelists who spared time to be with us and who shared so many insights from their workplaces, from their professional lives, and most importantly, the advice that they've shared to the younger generation for this audience that's here at Tech Gig Geek Goddess, women coders, women programmers, women technologists who are all listening to you, who all are looking up to you, who and maybe want to become one of you at some point of time. Thank you so much, everybody. With this, I'm calling it a wrap at this panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.